You to come stay with us when the baby's born. Please. I didn't know what to say. For years, I'd dreamed of hearing those words. Now that they were real, I just sat there in silence, my heart pounding. Are you sure? I asked softly. Of course, he said. You're my mother. I want my daughter to know where she comes from. I smiled through my tears. Then I'll come, Daniel. I'll come. That night, after I hung up, I didn't turn off the porch light. For the first time in a long time, I wanted it to stay shining, like a beacon for all that was lost and finally found again. In the weeks that followed, I prepared slowly. I baked cookies, folded small quilts, and packed a few things I thought a new grandmother might need. When I arrived at Daniel's home, Rebecca met me at the door, still just as kind, still just as gentle. Mama Carter, she said warmly, hugging me. Welcome home. Daniel stood behind her, holding a little girl, dark hair, bright eyes, maybe 2 years old. He smiled, and something in that smile erased every ache I'd ever carried. Mama, he said softly, this is Emily. The little girl looked at me, curious and shy. Then she reached out her tiny hand. I took it, feeling her small fingers wrap around mine. In that single moment, I felt years of loneliness dissolve. We spent the afternoon together, laughing, cooking, playing with Emily. And when Daniel showed me the nursery, I saw that photo frame I'd given him years ago, the one from the creek, sitting right on the shelf. He noticed me looking at it and smiled. Never forgot where I came from, he said quietly. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I stood by the window and looked out at the city lights. It wasn't the countryside. It wasn't home. But somehow, for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel out of place. Daniel kept his promise that time. He called every week. Sometimes short talks, sometimes long ones, but always real, always warm. Life had taught me something in all those years of waiting. Love doesn't disappear when it's quiet. It only rests until it's called again. And when it wakes, it comes back softer, but stronger. The days after Daniel's wedding passed slowly, like pages turning in an old book no one rushes to finish. I went back to my daily routines, feeding the hens, tending the small vegetable garden, sweeping the porch, and cooking simple meals just for myself. Life in our little corner of Texas rolled on the same way it always had, quiet, predictable, and steady. The seasons changed, spring gave way to summer, summer to fall. The creek out back grew shallow in August, and I'd sit there in the evenings, watching the light fade through the trees. That spot had always been ours, mine and the boys'. I could still picture them running barefoot along the bank, splashing water, laughing until they were out of breath. Sometimes I'd hear their laughter in the wind, like an echo that never quite faded. Luke called often, sweet boy that he was. He made sure I never went too long without hearing a familiar voice. But Daniel, he didn't call much. Weeks turned into months. Months into nearly a year. At first, I told myself he was busy, new job, new wife, new responsibilities. That's what happens when people grow up. But every night, when I'd sit by the window with the phone beside me, I'd glance at it now and then, hoping it might ring. It never did. I didn't resent him, I want to be clear about that. It wasn't anger that lived in me. It was just absence. A hollow kind of love that sits quietly, waiting to be remembered. On Sundays, I'd still make a full breakfast, pancakes, bacon, scrambled eggs, even though it was only me. It made the house smell like the old days. Like family. Like love that still lingered in the walls. Then I'd set one extra plate on the table, out of habit, before quietly putting it away again. People in town would sometimes ask about Daniel. How's your eldest, Mary? Still in the city? I'd smile and say, yes, he's doing well. Married now. Doing fine. They'd nod and move on. No one ever asked how I was doing. But maybe they already knew. Letters came every few months, short ones. Mostly updates. Work's good. Rebecca and I are moving. Sorry I haven't called. Always polite, always kind. But never long enough to feel like a real conversation. I kept every letter in a small tin box on the top shelf of the cupboard, beside his baby shoes and a faded family photo. One winter evening, a letter came that changed something in me. Dear Mama. I know I haven't been in touch enough. I think about home sometimes, the way the light hit the fields in the morning, how the house always smelled like coffee. Rebecca says I should call more. She's right. I promise, after the holidays, I'll come visit. Love, Daniel. I folded that letter neatly, kissed it, and tucked it into the tin box. Then I waited. Christmas came and went. The phone stayed silent. At first, I told myself maybe the weather was bad. Or maybe work kept him too busy. But as January turned into February, I stopped making excuses. There was only silence, not cruel. When my oldest son closed the screen door behind him that morning, I didn't realize it would sound so final. The spring creaked, the wood sighed, and the silence that followed sank deep into the walls of our little farmhouse. I stood by the window, holding his coffee mug, still half full, still warm, and watched him walk down the dirt road toward the bus station. He didn't look back. And I told myself that was a good thing. Boys shouldn't have to look back every time they leave home. They're supposed to be strong, confident, ready for the world. But my heart, it whispered something different. It said, just one look, honey. Just one look. I have 2 sons, Daniel and Luke. Daniel, the oldest, quiet and careful like his father. Luke, the younger one, full of questions, always with a grin that could melt the coldest winter. We lost their father 6 years ago to a heart that simply gave up after too much work and too little rest. Since then, this house, our old creaky home surrounded by wheat fields and the smell of morning dew, has been my whole world. I remember the nights we sat on the porch, all 3 of us wrapped in one blanket, listening to the crickets and talking about their dreams. Daniel used to say he wanted to build something big, something that would make people proud. Luke would just laugh and say, I just want to stay close to you, Mama. I used to smile at both of them, thinking how beautiful it was that love could fit in 2 such different hearts. But time changes things quietly. It doesn't knock or warn you. It just slides in through the cracks of your days, through long work hours, new faces, and words left unsaid. By the time Daniel turned 21, I could feel him drifting. He talked less, stayed longer in his room, and whenever I tried to ask if something was wrong, he'd smile that polite smile that said, Don't worry, Mama. I thought maybe it was just growing up. But sometimes, I'd hear him on the phone, whispering, pacing outside under the old oak tree. And though I couldn't make out the words, I could feel the distance building, quiet, steady, and cold like the winter wind that slips under the door. Then one evening, while I was folding laundry, Daniel came to me. Mama, he said softly, I got a job offer. Out in Dallas. His voice was calm, but his eyes told me it wasn't just a job. There was someone there. Someone new. And even before he finished explaining, I knew this was goodbye, not forever, but goodbye all the same. I smiled the way mothers do when they're trying not to break. That's good, baby, I said. You go make your life. Don't worry about me. But that night, when the lamp was off and the house was quiet, I sat on his bed and cried until the dawn light touched the curtains. Next to his father's picture. Luke saw it that evening and asked, So he's not coming this year either? I tried to sound cheerful. He said next year, honey. Luke just nodded, but I could tell he didn't believe it. Christmas came and went quietly. The house was filled with the smell of pine and cinnamon, but it still felt empty. After dinner, Luke played his guitar, a slow, gentle tune that his father used to hum. I sat by the fire, staring at Daniel's chair, and whispered to myself. He'll come home. He just needs time. But time, as I've learned, doesn't heal everything. Sometimes, it just teaches you how to live with the ache. Spring arrived, and Luke got accepted into a college 2 states away. He was so excited, and I was proud, truly proud. But when he hugged me and said, "Don't worry, Mama. I'll call every day," I felt something deep inside me tremble. Because I'd heard those words before. After Luke left, the house became still in a way I can't quite describe. It wasn't just quiet, it was hollow. No footsteps. No laughter. Just the clock ticking and the wind brushing against the windows. Sometimes, at night, I'd hear the old floor creak and think for a moment that one of the boys had come home. I'd sit up, heart racing, listening. But it was always just the house settling, same as me, both of us getting used to being alone. One evening, while sorting the mail, I came across a small envelope with Daniel's handwriting. My heart leapt. Inside was a wedding invitation. His wedding. No phone call. No conversation. Just a card. The date was set for the following month, in Dallas. There was no note attached, just printed words. Daniel and Rebecca invite you to share in their joy. For a long time I just sat there, staring at it. The light from the kitchen window fell across the page, and I could see my hands shaking. Luke called later that night, and I told him. He was quiet for a while, then said softly, "Are you going to go?" I didn't answer right away. Because truthfully, I didn't know. Part of me wanted to, I wanted to see him, to meet the woman who now held his world. But another part of me, the tired part, was afraid. Afraid that maybe he'd changed so much, I wouldn't recognize my own son anymore. I placed the invitation on the kitchen table, next to Daniel's old coffee mug, the same one I'd kept all this time. That night, I dreamed of him as a little boy, running barefoot through the fields, laughing, calling for me to watch. And when I reached out to hold him, he just kept running, farther, and farther, until the golden fields turned to gray. When I woke up, the sun was rising, painting the sky pink and soft. I whispered to myself, maybe it's time to let him go. But even as I said it, tears filled my eyes. Because letting go of your child isn't something you do once. It's something you do over and over again, every time they walk away, every time they forget to call, every time their life moves farther from your and that's. The hardest part, loving them enough to let them forget you, if forgetting is what helps them grow. The week before Daniel's wedding, the mailman stopped by the porch and said, "Got another letter for you, Mrs. Carter. Looks like it's from your boy." I smiled, trying to hide how my hands trembled. When he drove away, I sat down on the steps and carefully opened it. Inside was a short note. "Mama, I hope you can come. It would mean a lot to see you there. I know I haven't called enough. I'm sorry. Rebecca really wants to meet you. Love, Daniel." I read those lines over and over again. The words "I'm sorry" sat heavy on my heart. It wasn't much, but it was enough to make me pack a bag that same evening. Luke called when he heard I was going. "Mama, I wish I could come too," he said, "but finals are next week. Tell him I love him, okay?" "I will, honey," I said softly. "You take care of yourself." I spent the night ironing my best dress, a simple blue one with white lace on the collar. It was old, but it still made me feel like myself. I packed a small gift, too, a framed photo of the boys fishing by the creek when they were little. That photo carried the whole world I missed. The next morning, I took the early train. It was a long ride, miles and miles of open fields, little towns, and faded billboards passing by the window. As the train rolled south, I thought about the last time I'd seen Daniel. He was standing in the driveway, suitcase in hand, telling me not to worry. I remembered how the morning sun caught his face just right, how young he looked, how certain. Now, he was a grown man, about to start his own family. I should have felt proud. But all I could think was how fast time had slipped away. When I reached Dallas, the city felt loud and sharp compared to the soft hum of our small town. Tall buildings, cars honking, people rushing, it was another world. I clutched my small purse and whispered to myself, Just one day, Mary. Just one day, and then you'll go home. The wedding was at a modest church with white walls and tall windows. Outside, the garden was filled with flowers, pale pinks and soft yellows. I stood for a while by the gate, watching the guests arrive in their fine clothes. No one seemed to notice me, an older woman holding a small gift wrapped in brown paper. When Daniel finally stepped out of a car, my breath caught. He looked handsome, so much like his father at that age. But there was something distant in his eyes, something grown and weary. For a moment, I wondered if he'd even recognize me. Then he saw me. He stopped, blinked, and his face softened. Mama. He walked up and hugged me, gently, like he was afraid I'd break. It's good to see you, he said quietly. For a while, neither of us spoke. I just held on to him, memorizing the feel of his arms, the scent of his cologne, the sound of his breath. When we finally stepped apart, he looked a little guilty, a little boy again for just a moment. I'm sorry it's been so long, he said. I smiled. You're here now. That's all that matters. Rebecca came over soon after, tall, graceful, and kind-eyed. She shook my hand warmly. Mrs. Carter, I've heard so much about you. Please, call me Mary, I said. And congratulations, dear. You look beautiful. She blushed. Thank you. For the first time in a long while, I felt peace. The ceremony was lovely, soft music, vows spoken gently, sunlight pouring through stained glass. I sat quietly in the back pew, hands clasped, watching my son promise forever to someone new. It felt right. But it also felt like watching a door slowly close, one chapter ending so another could begin. After the ceremony, there was a small reception in the church hall. Laughter, toasts, the clinking of glasses. I sat at a corner table, smiling as I watched Daniel and Rebecca dance. Every now and then, he'd glance my way and smile, the same boyish grin that used to light up my kitchen. But as the night went on, I realized something. No one came to sit with me. I was surrounded by laughter, yet I'd never felt more invisible. Rebecca's family was warm and welcoming, but they were strangers. And Daniel, he was busy, introducing her to friends, talking about work, smiling for photos. He wasn't doing anything wrong. But still, I felt a quiet ache build inside my chest. At one point, a little boy spilled punch near my feet and his mother rushed over, flustered. I bent down, helped her clean it, and she said kindly, "Oh, are you the caterer?" I froze. Then smiled softly. "No, sweetheart. Just family." She apologized, but I waved it off. It wasn't her fault she didn't know who I was. Later that evening, as guests began to leave, Daniel found me outside by the garden. The sky was turning purple, and the church bell rang softly in the distance. He looked tired but happy. "Thank you for coming, Mama," he said. "It means a lot." I handed him the small wrapped frame. "This is for you." He unwrapped it slowly. When he saw the photo, him and Luke by the creek, their father standing behind them, he smiled. "Wow," he whispered. "I haven't seen this in years." "You were both so young," I said quietly. "You used to say you'd never leave that creek." He laughed a little, then grew quiet. "Life changes, huh?" I nodded. "It does." For a moment, I wanted to tell him everything, how much I missed him, how many nights I waited by the phone, how the house feels too big now. But I didn't. He looked so peaceful, so ready for this new beginning. I didn't want to weigh him down with old feelings. Instead, I said, "I'm proud of you, Daniel." "Truly." He smiled, hugged me again, and said, "You'll always be my home, Mama." But as I watched him walk back inside, hand in hand with his new wife, I knew things would never be the same. That night, I stayed at a small motel by the highway. The room was simple, one bed, thin curtains, a faint smell of coffee. I sat by the window, watching the cars pass, and thought about day. It was beautiful, yes. But it also hurt in ways I couldn't quite explain. Around midnight, my phone buzzed, a message from Luke. "How was it, Mama? Did you get to talk to him?" I typed back, "Yes, honey. He's happy. That's all a mother can hope for." Then I put the phone down and let the tears come quietly, one after another. Because happiness, I realized, can still break your heart, especially when it's found without you. The next morning, I packed my things and caught the first bus home. No one noticed me leave. As the city disappeared behind me, I closed my eyes and whispered a small prayer. That Daniel's life would be filled with the kind of love that never forgets where it began. When I reached home, the porch light was still on, just as I'd left it. The air smelled of rain and soil, the kind of scent that makes you feel rooted again. Inside, the silence greeted me like an old friend. I placed Daniel's wedding invitation and a copy of their photo on the mantel beside his father's picture. The three of them, past, present, and memory, side by side. Then I made a cup of coffee, sat at the table, and looked out the window. The same dirt road stretched out toward the horizon. I smiled softly and whispered, "He's happy now. That's all that matters." But deep down, a quiet voice asked, "Will he ever come back just to see me, not out of duty, but out of love?" I didn't have an answer. Only the ticking clock, the chirping crickets, and the steady hum of the countryside, holding me in their quiet embrace. Not intentional, just silence. The kind that grows when people drift apart and don't notice until it's too late. Some nights I'd sit in the living room, the fire crackling softly, and talk to his father's photo on the mantel. "He's a good man," I'd whisper. "Just, far away. That's all." And in my heart, I'd hear his father's voice, steady, gentle. "He'll come back, Mary. He just needs time." So I waited some more. Years passed that way. Luke finished college, got a job in town, and visited every weekend. He'd fix the fence, mow the yard, and drive me to church on Sundays. But no matter how busy life got, he always came back. And that made all the difference. One summer afternoon, as Luke was fixing the roof, I brought him lemonade. He looked down at me and said, "Mama, you should come stay with me in town for a while. It gets too quiet out here." I smiled. "Quiet's not so bad. It's honest." He laughed softly. "You always say that." When he left that evening, I watched his truck disappear down the dirt road, dust rising behind the tires. Then I turned toward the empty porch swing, the one Daniel used to push with his foot while we talked about his dreams. The wood had faded from sun and rain, but it still creaked the same way. I sat there for a long time, listening to the wind. It was that same evening when something unexpected happened. The phone rang. I nearly dropped the dish I was washing. My heart started racing. For a second, I just stared at it, that old beige rotary phone sitting on the counter. Then I answered, "Hello? Mama?" It was Daniel. His voice was deeper, slower, older somehow. For a moment, I couldn't speak. My throat tightened, and my eyes filled up before I could stop them. "Daniel," I whispered. "Is that really you?" He laughed softly on the other end. "It's me, Mama. I should have called sooner." Silence filled the space between us, the kind that holds both love and apology. "How are you, sweetheart?" I asked finally. "I'm okay," he said. "Been busy, you know. Work. Life. But I've been thinking about home a lot lately." My hand trembled as I held the receiver. "Home's still here, Daniel. Always has been." He didn't speak right away. Then, quietly, he said, "I miss it. I miss you." Those words. I'd waited years to hear them. "I miss you too," I whispered, my voice shaking. "Every day." He sighed. "I've been terrible at calling. I know that. Rebecca says I carry guilt around like a shadow. I didn't mean to make you feel forgotten, Mama. I just thought I had more time. Tears slipped down my cheeks. Oh, honey, time's the one thing none of us have enough of. But hearing your voice, that's enough for me. We talked for a long while, about his job, his home, little memories that came flooding back like soft rain on old soil. He told me he'd been promoted. That he and Rebecca were expecting their first child. And then he said something that made my heart stop. I want you to meet her, Mama. I want. The house feels quieter these days. Sometimes I sit on the old porch, watching the sun melt behind the hills, the same hills my boys used to race up when they were little. I still hear their laughter in the wind. I still imagine their bare feet thudding against the wooden steps. Life has a way of slowing down when you least expect it. There was a time I thought I couldn't bear the silence. But now, I find peace in it. Every morning, I water the garden, the same patch where we once planted sunflowers together. They still bloom every summer, tall and proud, like little reminders that love never really disappears, it just changes shape. A few weeks ago, I got a letter. It wasn't from David. It was from his wife. She said he'd been unwell, tired, withdrawn, quiet lately. She said he'd been talking a lot about home. At first, I didn't know what to feel. Regret? Pain? Relief? But then, as I sat holding that letter, I realized something. Maybe, after all these years, he finally remembered. He might not say it out loud, but in some corner of his heart, he must have known that I never stopped loving him. Yesterday, I walked down to the river. The same one where we used to skip stones. I tossed one into the water and whispered, I forgive you, my son. And I hope, someday, you forgive yourself. The ripples carried my words away, soft and shimmering under the evening light. And for the first time in a long while, I felt light too. Now, every night before bed, I whisper both their names, David and Michael, into the quiet. I close my eyes and thank God for giving me the gift of being their mother, even if life didn't go the way I dreamed. Some loves never end. They just live quietly, like the steady hum of crickets at dusk, or the creak of an old rocking chair on a wooden floor. And if one day my boys ever walk through that gate again, I'll be right here, with a pot of soup on the stove, and an open heart that never stopped waiting. Because that's what mothers do. We wait. We love. And even when the phone never rings, we still listen for it.